If you want to build a world-class performance car from scratch, you usually need two things: staggering amounts of corporate capital and a manufacturing facility roughly the size of a small city. Look at this lineup of classic Ferraris. For decades, extreme automotive performance was locked down by a few historic names, like Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Bugatti. These brands possessed generations of entrenched wealth, racing pedigree, and total market dominance. Breaking into this club is incredibly rare. Enter Christian von Koenigsegg. In 1994, he was 22 years old. He had zero engineering background. He didn't own a factory. What he did have was a sketchbook filled with ideas. When he announced to the world that he was going to build the perfect car, the industry largely ignored him. Challenging massive monopolies that had spent a century perfecting their craft with nothing but paper and ambition seemed completely absurd. In Stockholm, Sweden, 5-year-old Christian watched a stop-motion animated movie called The Pinchcliffe Grand Prix. The film tells the story of an ordinary bicycle repairman who manages to build the fastest racing car on Earth. Most kids watch a movie like that and eventually forget it. Christian made it his goal. That deep fixation on mechanics and raw speed became tangible when he drove his very first go-kart at age 6. While other kids dreamed of becoming drivers, Christian became obsessed with designing the machines themselves. To fund this, he spent his early 20s scraping together cash from import and export ventures. He eventually secured around $200,000 in government grants, paired with early investments from his father to give his company its initial runway. So the board was set. A young founder with a tiny budget was launching a hypercar. The odds of surviving an industry that burns through billions of dollars in routine research and development were close to zero. Hardware startups are notoriously brutal, and Koenigsegg experienced the worst of it. For the first 8 years of the company's existence, from 1994 to 2002, they did not sell a single production car. Zero revenue. Christian and his tiny team were locked in a grueling loop. They designed, tested, failed, and redesigned over and over again, finally scraping together their first working prototype in 1996. Then, right as they were building momentum, disaster struck. In 2003, their original factory caught fire. Years of specialized tools, raw materials, and blueprints went up in smoke. An event like that usually bankrupts a fledgling company. Christian used the destruction of the old facility as a mandate to relocate into a space that could finally support the scale of his production goals. Koenigsegg relocated to an abandoned Swedish Air Force base in Ängelholm. They converted these massive former fighter jet hangars into a hypercar laboratory, giving them the aerospace-grade environment they needed to scale. The relocation paid off. They delivered the CC-8S, effectively ending their 8-year drought. The automotive world was caught completely off guard by this car's incredibly lightweight carbon fiber construction. From there, the performance numbers escalated rapidly. By 2005, their next iteration, the CCR, hit a top speed of 241 miles per hour, securing the world record for the fastest production car. Taking that title away from the established giants proved that a tiny, scrappy startup in Sweden could actually go toe-to-toe with the oldest monopolies in the business and win. Christian's primary contribution to the company is technical. He acts as the lead inventor, personally sketching and engineering the firm's proprietary mechanical systems from a blank page. Look at this animated diagram of their light-speed transmission. Unlike a normal gearbox that moves sequentially, this system eliminates the traditional flywheel and clutch, engaging multiple pathways to shift between gears almost instantly. He applied that same unconstrained thinking to the engine itself with free valve technology. Here, the traditional rigid camshaft is gone. Instead, individual electronic actuators pulse dynamically, giving engineers absolute control over exactly when the engine's valves open and close. This diagram shows how that logic results in the tiny, friendly giant engine. It maps the physical footprint of a tiny 2.0-liter 3-cylinder block against its output. By burning compatible fuels and using twin turbos, that tiny package generates an absurd 600 horsepower. When you compound all of these mechanical innovations into a single chassis, you get the Agera RS. In 2017, this specific vehicle shattered world records with a verified two-way average speed of 277.87 miles per hour. Koenigsegg achieved these world records by discarding traditional mechanical conventions and redesigning the internal logic of the car's most vital components. Today, that 22-year-old with a sketchbook oversees a global manufacturing powerhouse. Operating with roughly 850 employees, Koenigsegg remains headquartered in the very same Engelholm facility. They maintain strict exclusivity. Rather than outsourcing components to mass-market suppliers, every single vehicle is hand-built, relying on extensive in-house carbon fiber manufacturing. That level of obsessive craftsmanship applies directly to current megacars like the 2,300 horsepower hybrid Gemera and the Jesko seen here. These machines frequently sell out completely, long before a single chassis rolls onto the production floor. Over 3 decades, Koenigsegg successfully vaulted the highest barrier to entry in the automotive world, placing its name alongside the century-old Italian and French legacy brands it once idolized. Even now, more than 30 years after filing the initial paperwork, Christian von Koenigsegg is still the company's active CEO. He remains heavily involved in the day-to-day engineering, obsessing over the precise details of new designs. It is a massive, highly technical empire, yet it all traces back in a straight line to a 5-year-old boy sitting in a theater, captivated by a stop-motion bicycle repairman. The existence of Koenigsegg proves that monumental hardware innovations do not require giant, entrenched corporations as a prerequisite. Capital and history are powerful, but they do not have a monopoly on good ideas. Impossible is rarely a permanent law of physics. It is usually just a temporary status quo, waiting patiently for someone brave enough to challenge it.